So, hello everyone. My name is Timea. I'm part of the DSA team, and we'll start our webinar on level of detail calculations in Tableau. I know this is quite a tricky topic. It did take a while until I managed to wrap my head around them as well. But once I understood what's behind it and how they work, they became one of my favorite things to use in Tableau. So hopefully today's webinar will help you understand them a bit better. So today we will cover what is the level of detail of data, just to understand what we're looking at, what changes the level of detail of data in the view, what are the level of detail calculations, and we'll cover all three functions that we have in Tableau: fixed, include, and exclude. And we'll do a couple of examples just to see them how we can use them. Has everyone managed to download the workbook? You don't need to follow along, but you can if you wish. You had the link in the slide, which was right there. And I will move on to a new instance of Tableau. And when you open Tableau, you can either connect to the file I sent, or you can just simply click Sample Soup Store, and it will go straight onto the worksheet. If you've connected through the traditional way, you just need to press Add, go into the folder where you have the file saved, and then select the file. It will appear here, and then take the orders and drag it onto the view. I've already have it in there, so I'm not going to drag it again. And that should load the data. All good? Okay, so before we start doing anything in Tableau, I think it's important to understand where we're trying to go with the level of detail calculations. For example, if we want to see the contribution of each state to the total sales per region, and if we want to build this out from the beginning, you don't need to follow along. This is just an example. So looking at the contribution of each state to the total sales, obviously we would need to have the state, drag it onto view, and then we would need the region, which is region. And now, if you want to see the total sales, obviously we bring sales onto here. So now we have the sales in the view. And I don't know if you've done table calculations. Can you hear me well? You can only see the PowerPoint. Okay, give me a minute. We'll sort that out. Okay, can you see the screen now? I will open up the Tableau. Can you see it now? Still the PowerPoint? No. I wonder, give me a minute. Sorry about this, guys. Yeah, is it working now? Okay, it should. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. So I'll just go back and start a bit from the beginning because you haven't really seen anything that I was showing. So this is the bit that I built. So let's resume from the part when I was saying that when we're looking at level of detail calculations, what we want to see is, for example, if we want to build a table like this, we can see the sales right here, and these are the sales for every single state. Here we can see the sales per region, which correspond to the central region, and then we can see the percentage of total sales alongside, which is actually a table calculation, and it's basically this divided by this, so it shows the total sales for each region. So our goal will be initially to rebuild this table using level of detail calculations. However, in order to understand what level of detail calculations are, we need to understand what is the level of detail of data. Or in other words, when we think of level of detail, we can imagine a drill down where the least granular level is an entire country. As we drill down into a lower granularity, actually, which is most granular, we can look at the states, we can look at the regions, and then the states. And then as we go further down, we can see the cities. Can you hear me all right? All good? I'm just gonna check the chat for a minute. We can hear where the volume is. Oh, that might be an internet connection thing. Can you hear me all right now? How do you know? Fading in and out. Ooh. What about now? Is it a bit better? No, so. Okay. Same. I'm really sorry about that. I think it has to do with the internet connection, unfortunately. Consistent. I'm trying to keep the mic as close as possible to my mouth and not move it. So if I keep it like this, is that okay? Thank you so much. Okay. However, if you lose me in the meantime, just please let me know. Okay, resuming to the level of detail of data. In this situation, the most granular is the city. And no matter how much we break down the data, that is kind of the most granular thing that we can understand. Can we look at the data source? Yeah, sure. So if we go into the data source, if you click add, and if you select more, then just navigate into the folder where you saved the document, the sample soup store. Double click and just press open. I already have it open, so I'm not gonna do that. And once it loads, just drag orders onto the view. Okay, so coming back to the LODs, it's always very important to identify the level of detail of the data that we are working with. Here we have an example. This is from a Make of a Monday example. It's a bit simplified. However, you can see here very nicely the level of detail that are within the data. So we have country, then we have level 1 government, then we have the second level of government, and then the most granular is going to be bridge name. Because we will be working with the sample superstore data, what we want to see is the level of granularity of this data set. So if we just open in the view data, we know that every line of the data is an order. So the lowest level of granularity in this case is going to be the order ID. This is quite important to know once we start working with the data. Okay, when we have Tableau open and when we start working with Tableau, it's again important to understand what changes the level of data on a visualization. First, before we use the level of detail calculations. Don't need to follow along at this stage. For example, if we bring profit onto the view, this shows that the profit for the entire superstore data set. However, if we want to bring in, for example, category, I'm just going to use the search bar, which is my best friend usually, drag it onto rows. Now we can see that the level of detail changed to be category. Now, if we bring in subcategory as well, now the level of detail in the view is going to be subcategory. However, because of this, we lost the total, for example, for the category in case of furniture. Another way of changing the level of granularity within the view can also happen by, for example, dragging the subcategory onto detail. This is, again, not the best view, definitely not best practices. However, you can see that now the data in the furniture category, for example, is broken down based on the subcategories that are within that category. So this is how we change the level of detail within the view. The same thing happens if we drag it onto colors. Again, it will influence the level of detail. Okay, so moving on to level of detail calculations, what are they? There's a lovely definition here that says LOD expressions allow us to compute aggregations that are not at the level of detail of the view. That is a bit complicated and not so easy to understand. So let's start unpicking this. So compute aggregations. Aggregations are calculations such as sum, averages, minimum, maximum, and that are not at the level of detail of the view. Just coming back to this example, that again is not the prettiest. This is what the level of detail within the view refers to. In this case, the level of detail of the view is subcategory. We have three types of LODs. We have fixed, include, and exclude. We'll take every single one and I'll guide you through them. But first, let's understand how we're forming the syntax of level of detail calculations. This is the syntax. It always starts with curly brackets and ends with curly brackets. So when we're forming the syntax, ideally we want to put both because otherwise we tend to forget, or at least I do. The beginning of the syntax starts off with the function, which can be fixed, include, or exclude. Then we add in the dimension. In some cases, we can add another dimension. The examples that we have today will cover only one. And then we have the aggregation, again, which can be sum, average, minimum, maximum, whichever we wish, and then the measure value that we want to aggregate. I believe that there is a bit of an easier way to understand LODs than what I've just shown you. So in other words, for example, if we have the syntax fixed on region, sum of sales, this actually means that for each region, please Tableau calculate the sum of sales. This is quite relevant when we start applying this and using this in an example. To understand the fixed function, I think that if you understand the fixed function, you can do pretty much any level of detail calculations. The include and exclude can all be translated and kind of solved with fixed as well. So an example here would be fixed on region sum of sales, and as I mentioned before, that means that for every for the level of the region, please return the sum of sales. So let's start off with the example that we had at the beginning. So at this stage, you can open a new instance of Tableau. I will just go to the different tab, but obviously if you have your Tableau open is pretty much the same, just click new sheet. And at this stage, we want to see how to the sum of sales for each state compared to the sum of region. So we can build out the state, bring it onto rows. Then we need the region, bring it also on rows just in front of states. And now we want the sum of sales, which we bring onto the table. Okay, so now we have the sum of sales for each state. However, we want to have now the sales for the region as well. And this is where the level of detail calculations come in. So in order to create the level of detail calculations, we just click on the little drop down here, create calculated field. And what we want here is total sales by region. And just as a bit of a reminder, we start off with the curly brackets. Let me get the syntax just because it's a bit easier to follow. So now if we go back onto here, I'll keep the syntax here just so we understand better how we're building this. So we start with the curly brackets, and we're saying for each region in this case, and we're working with the fixed for each region, return the sum of sales. And we close the curly brackets. Okay, and delete this one from here. And it says that we have an error. Oh, already exists, that's mine. Okay, you shouldn't have an error if you were following along. So this would be the level of detail calculation, and we press OK. And now we just bring it onto the table. And now we can see the total sales for each region. Now to calculate the percentage contribution of each state to the total sales of the region, we want to create a new calculated field, and we can name this percentage sales contribution to region. And now we just drag the sum of sales divided by the total sales per region. Once this is ready, we press OK and drag it onto the table. And we're gonna have loads of zeros, but that's absolutely fine because this has to do with the formatting. So if we click on the pill that has our percentage, click format, and then we want to have this as a percent. We can, let's lose the decimal points just for now. Yeah, I can copy and paste the syntax. I can see that in the chat you were asking about that. So if we go back in here, total sales by region, edit, and I will paste this in. There we go. Okay, so moving on to another example, and this is a really nice user case because I love coloring in Tableau. And this example would look if the average sales by category are above or below the sales within, this looks whether the sales in the subcategory are above or below the average sales within the category. In other words, we just want to see if a specific subcategory sells better than the average for the entire category. So how can we build this out? If we go to a new sheet, and then we bring in category, we bring in subcategory. And this would be quite easy to do, and without an LOD, if we would want to see category in the view as well, but that's not what we want to do. And let's bring in sales. We did say that we want to see the average sales. Okay, and as mentioned before, we don't want to have the category in the view. Let's assume that we're creating a report and the category is not needed. We just want to have it in the context that is it below or above the sales for that category. So let's take this off. We can sort this so it's a bit nicer, and we can have this as an entire view just so we can see it better. Okay, so now we don't have subcategory in the view, and in order to color, even if we're coloring, we do need to tell Tableau that that's the level of detail that we want to work with. So we just create a calculated field, and then we type sales by category. Okay, so building up the syntax, I will put both curly brackets. So we want this as a fix, and what we want to say at the level of the category, please return the sum of sales. And once we have this, just click OK. Could you follow along with the syntax? Okay, amazing. So now we press OK, and we have average sales by category. However, we don't want them in the view just yet. What we want to do is to create another calculated field. Category, and we take the average sales by category and just say, are they above or below the average sales? And we have to wrap this into an average because we're comparing average with average. Okay, Now press OK. And because we want to color, we just drag this onto color, and for some reason it's not working. We can't figure that out in a minute. That is actually because we do want to return the average sales, not the sum of sales here. Average sales. Okay. And there it is. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, and now we color this based on whether it's above or below the sales by category. The next syntax that we will be looking at is include. And the include function includes a higher granularity of data that is not within the visualization. The syntax is built like this, very, very similar to the fixed. The only thing we're changing, instead of fixed, we have include here. And if we want to say this in plain English, what we're trying to say is that as well as what's in the view, include the following dimension, then calculate the following aggregation. Let's have a look at an example. So you can see that in this view, we have the regions, we have the sales, and here we have the sum of sales for each state. However, we don't have state anywhere in the view. Okay, let's see how we can build this. So let's bring regions, drop it onto rows. Let's bring in sales. Drop it onto the view. And now we want to see the average sales. So we change the measure from a sum to an average. And in order to create our average per state, we need to create a calculated field, average by state with include. So what we're saying is that Tableau, I know that you have region in there. However, I want you to include state. And once you've included state, return the average, return the average sum of sales for each state. So we need a sum here. Sum of sales. And close the curly brackets. In this field, I think I have too many brackets. And there it is. All right, should work now. And then press OK. And now we just bring it onto view. And now we have the average sales per region. Average sales for every single state. Let's have a look at another example. So this is a bar chart. It's a line chart. Yeah, and it looks at the average sales per customer in each region over time. If we want to rebuild this, create new sheet, and let's bring sales into the view. Let's put it onto columns. Average sales, and let's make it into an average. Every sales per customer in each region. So we want region, but we don't want customer in the view. And let's change this into a line, and we're a bit the other way around, but that's fine because we can flip this. Oh, sorry guys. Don't know why. And make this into a line. Don't know why it's just a dot. And that's because we need the year as well on there. Sorry, the order date, which we right click. And what we want here is the year with blue. There you go. And just make this entire view. Okay, there's another trick that we could use when we edit the axis, just so we can see the fluctuations a bit better. We can say independent axis, and we don't need to include 0 in this particular case, and then we can see the changes a lot better. So this is at the moment the average sales. However, this is not exactly what we want. We want the sales per customer in each region. So let's create our LOD syntax, create calculated field, sales per customer, per customer, and we say that I know you have region in the view, you also have year, but I want to include customer name, and at this stage return the sum of sales and close the curly brackets. And there's another error, sales per customer, rename that. Okay, the calculation is valid now. So if we press OK, what we can do is just simply drag this over the pill that we already had, and that changes the view. And if we pop the labels on as well, it's also a bit easier to read. Moving on to the exclude function, which means that the exclude will remove a granularity of data that is within the visualization for the specific calculation. By now, the syntax should be fairly familiar, but this time, instead of fixed or include, we're using exclude. And translated into plain English, what we're saying is, hey Tableau, exclude this dimension from the view, and then calculate the aggregation of a specific measure. This is an example that appears quite often when it comes to reporting. So you can see that this chart will show the category, will show the discount, and will show the subcategory, and we can see the bar charts for every subcategory. And if we want to make this a bit more visual, there are also the labels for it. However, at this stage, this is the challenge, because the level of granularity here is subcategory. So we want to have a column that has the discount, the average discount for the category as well. Let's build this. So we had category, bring it onto rows, and then let's bring subcategory as well. And the next thing we need is the quantity. There you go. So now we just need that additional column that would bring in the average % discount for every category within the view. So let's create our calculated field. And what we're saying is, Tableau, I know that subcategory is in the view, and I know that that's the granularity of the view. However, for my calculation, please exclude subcategory and return the average discount. And let's close the brackets as well. Okay, so now we have this in the view, and let's drag this onto here, and it's going to create a whole lot of mess, but that's fine, because what we want to do is change it from continuous onto discrete, and then we have the discount value here. And just to make it a bit more visual, we can move it onto here. We still need to do a bit of formatting, just so we have percentages instead of that long 0 point something number. So this is it. Moving on to another example. How do each state's average sales compare to the average sales of the region? This is quite similar to our initial example, but also we're adding some color onto our view. I would also like to remind you that all these examples sometimes might not be the best way to visualize the data. However, these examples are really good to understand how level of detail calculations work. And obviously we can do all sorts of other different charts, but at this stage, looking at the table, we can see in the best way whether our calculation is working or not. So when we are recreating this, we need to bring region onto rows and state. Okay, and now we need sales. Bring it onto the view. However, we are looking at average sales. So we change this to be an average. Okay, and now we want to see the average sales per region. So we create our calculated field and we call this sales per region with exclude. So what we're saying here is, I know that state is the lowest level of granularity, but for this calculation, please exclude it. Exclude state and return the sum of sales. And we will average this once we bring it onto view. Sales per region, drag it onto view, and I think I brought the wrong one. It's turning into an attribute. Let me just see. don't know why it's bringing it in as an attribute, because what we want here is to have actually an average, but and oh, sorry, I know why, because again, instead of average, what we were after, I brought back the sum of sales. Okay, and there we have our calculations now. All right, now if you want to see the difference between these to see where actually are below or above the average, we need to create a new calculated field called difference from region, and we bring in the average sales minus the sales for the region, okay, and then bring it onto the view as well. And you can see that these ones, these ones that are with minus, and then what we can do, just to color it as well, we can create a new calculated field and just say, is it better than average per region? And we just have the difference, and do we say, is it above or below 0? And once we have this, we drag it onto color. And now we can see those that are actually below and those that are actually above the region. Okay, there's one quite important aspect when we work with level of detail calculations, because when we send requests to Tableau, Tableau cannot do absolutely everything at once. So this is why we have the order of operations, and Tableau will perform specific operations in a specific order. And this is quite important because, as you can see the sequence here, first, when we import a file and extract the filters there, that's the first thing that Tableau will do. Then it will apply data source filters if there are any. Then we'll apply the context filters if there are any. And between the context filters and dimension filters, Tableau will perform the table calculation, the level of detail calculation. Then it will apply dimension filters, and include and exclude will be between the dimension filters and measure filters. That is because include and exclude works with what is in the view. Because remember, we were saying that if something is in the view that we don't want to include in the calculation, just use exclude. Or if something is not in the view, but we want to use it in the calculation, use include. This is easier to understand if we have a look at it like this. So here you can see the percentage of total sales. We can see the same thing using fixed table calculation, and the same thing using exclude. This one is a table calculation, this is fixed, and this is exclude. So now, if we start applying the filters, we have the region filter here. Let's deselect East. And what happens? For the total sales, we can see that this area will total up 100. The same thing will happen in case of exclude. You can see the 100 in the corner. However, for fixed, if we select this, it will go all the way to 70%. That is because the filters are happening after the fixed level of detail calculation was performed. So if we want to change this order, what we need to do is right-click on region, and apply to context. And you can see that now all of them are the same. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning, I will stop now for a minute. Is everyone okay? Do you have any questions at this stage? All good? All right. So we have a couple of minutes, and I would just like to show you how we can change include and exclude into a fixed. So if we look at the first example, remember this table that we solved using include, what we can do is, let me just bring up the formula. You can actually achieve this if you're following along. You can just go back to the tab where you had the include example and just create a duplicate. And once we have the duplicate, we want to duplicate the formula, edit, and now we can just say that with fixed. So let's remember a bit what we are doing here. We want to find the average sales for every state. And because we had region in the view, we wanted to include the state as well. So it's, if we want to convert this into the fixed, what we're saying is, for every state, return the sum of sales. So instead of include, we can just change this into fixed and apply. And now we want sales by state with fixed and drag it onto the view. However, this is not a sum, this is an average. And now you can see that the two match. And one final example that we had with the discount. So if we just create a duplicate of that calculation and then edit for each category, and we just say that this is using fixed. So here we excluded subcategory. However, if now we would just change exclude with fixed, what we would be doing is creating a calculation at the level of detail of subcategory. Whereas in this case, we want the discount by region, by category. So instead of exclude, we use fixed, and we want to do this at the level of category. Okay, press OK, and then bring it onto the view. Again, it's gonna mess things up just a bit, but if we make this into a discrete and bring it next to this one, again, we need to do a bit of formatting. And we want this as a percentage. You can see that they're absolutely the same. So, are there any questions at this stage? Basically, this is the end of the webinar. I hope you managed to follow along well, but we still have a couple of minutes for questions. Yes, the recording will be on YouTube, and I will upload the workbook as well. So probably by tomorrow it will be there. You will be able to access it using the same link that you used to download the data. Yeah, I will share the workbook. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Remember that we run webinars quite often, so make sure to check our meetup page, Let's Talk Data, and you'll find all the upcoming webinars. Thank you so much.